What if your grocery bag could be beautiful, sturdy and handmade? I used this paper bag as a pattern to make a denim tote with Sashiko stitching and a clever one-piece strap. Let me show you how. So it's not really a pattern, but I actually measured this bag just to basically get the sizes. So the width's 18.5. The length is 17.5. And then I did measure the base, although I wasn't sure if I would use it, and it was 7.5 inches. So I rounded those numbers up to allow for seam allowance and turning the top of the bag down, and I cut out a piece 20 inches by 40 inches. I drew this elephant freehand. I'm going to use Sashiko stitching to bring it to life. It's a simple pattern, but it gives the bag some personality. The denim's folded in half and the elephant's roughly in the middle of the square. It doesn't have to be exact, of course, so I think that probably should be pretty close. White transfer paper today for this project. So I need to put it with the light side down to the denim, and I'm just going to keep my elephant in place and slide it under there. I don't think it'll move, but just to be on the safe side. And have a cutting mat underneath. I'm going to draw down here on his legs first and press hard and see if I get anything before I go around and do the rest. Okay, let's lift that up and have a look. Okay. Well, it's a little pale, so I've decided to go over it with a heat erasable pen. That's a bit clearer. Let's open this out and begin some Sashiko. Doesn't really matter where I start on this, but I do want to do the outline first. I think I've said before, I really enjoy doing Sashiko on denim. It just gives it a nice, stable kind of background to work on. Feels really good. So, loading the stitches on. Let's pull some through and have a look what that looks like. So I'll just work my way around there, and when I've got the outline done, I'll come back and we'll decide what to do in the centre of the elephant. I've got the ears done of my elephant there. I just did some echo stitching and also a few lines along the trunk. And I gave him eyelashes. Go away, Daisy, go on, go. And I'm deciding now what to put on the body, and Daisy thinks she needs to come and help me. Go on, Daisy, go on. Good girl. So, my choices, I think, are either this one, which will make this just kind of a half a shape on the body, or these little Neither of them will give me anything to put on the legs, so I'll have to think about that later. So I think I quite like the idea of this one. I think I've drawn all that. Let me take that off and have a look. And I think these little star-like shapes will work for the legs. I'll go ahead with the Sashiko and we'll go from there. I think that's kind of cute. I'm going to make the strap next. This is 5 inches wide and I cut 3 strips width of the fabric, which turns out to be about 42 inches. It really depends on the fabric. I joined the 3 together and now I'm folding it in half and pressing it all the way along. Then I'll open it up where I can see the crease line down the centre, and I'm going to fold the outer edges in so they touch that centre line. Then press those. The last thing is to fold it again, and again press along the edge. And once we machine along that edge, the strap will be made. I do need this strap to be a loop though, so I'm just opening up the 2 ends now, sewing them together, and then I'll fold everything back in place. I'm going to machine sew along this edge, fairly close to the edge of this strap. And then the same on the other edge to match. To place the straps, I'm going to draw a line, and it's 5 inches from each outside edge. And I'm drawing it down the full length of the bag. This one-piece strap's going to go all the way around the bag, which is a great trick for strength, especially if you're carrying heavy things. I'll lay my strap along that line and it'll all be nice and straight. And just repeat that on the other side. I'm also going to mark lines on the top and bottom of the fabric at 1/2 inch and 2.5 inches. The top and the bottom, when it's sewn together, will all become the top, and this is for folding down later on in the project. Now my strap loop is actually 127 inches long. You might not want your handles quite that long, but you'll see what I'm doing later in the project and you can decide. I've folded this in half. I need to find the very centre bottom at the point where the straps will be. I'm just putting a pin there to mark it. This will help me get my straps evenly placed. And then I'm just opening it back out and laying it all out nice and smooth. And I'm opening my loop out now and marking each end of the loop with a pin as well. I'll match a loop pin with a centre bottom pin on each side, and that way my handles will be equal size. You'll see what I mean later. Match the pins and place the edge of the strap along the line that you drew that measured 5 inches in from the edge, and pin all that in place. I'm pinning all the way up here, but you're actually going to stop sewing 5 inches before the top. This is because you need to allow space for that folding down and sewing of the top edge. And on the other side, I'm matching the pins and laying the strap on the line exactly the same way. Do you see here how when this bag is folded in position, these straps will go all the way underneath? And you can see which part will be the handles. And I'm just going to put a 5-inch mark here just so I know where to start and stop sewing. That's all in place and ready to take to the machine. And I'm going to sew directly on those stitching lines that are already showing on the strap. I'm just going to pause here though and show you something totally optional. I'm doing this because I don't want my Sashiko stitching that's on the back, even though it's on the inside of the bag, I don't want it to show, so I'm just going to cover it with a patch. Just skip to the next chapter if you don't want to see this. So I've cut a square of fabric and some fusible the same, and I'm just fusing them together. And then I'm just going to fuse that over the inside stitching of my Sashiko. So I'll peel off the fusible and just iron that on there. And I'm just using that ruler so that I get the placement of the patch nice and square. If I was doing a bag that had a lining, I wouldn't need to do this, but I'm just trying to make a really simple tote here. So I'm just going to sew around this patch. I'll have to be careful to keep the straps out of the way. It would have been easier if I'd have done this before I pinned the straps in place. I decided after I did that. And you know, there's nearly always a way to figure out how to do things. Okay, back to sewing the straps on. So again, I'm not sewing in the top or bottom 5 inches. I'm just going to sew down this line, and I'm going to sew on the machine line of stitching that I've already got on there. I'm just going to stop here, turn and sew across, and then I'll go back down the other side. And later on, this top part, I will go back and sew that too. So the straps will be fully attached. Now we're going to put the bag together, so we're just going to sew down the sides. And we're doing a French seam here. So it looks like I'm sewing it wrong because it's not right sides together, it's wrong sides together, which is the opposite to normal. But this is the way that it's done. So I'm going to sew a fairly scant seam down each side of this bag. And now, do you see all those little frayed edges? I'm just going to trim those off because if you don't, you'll see them on the finished bag. And then just do the second side seam the same. Now turn the bag inside out, and then you're going to pin these seams together. And then what happens is, when you do this second row of stitching, your raw edges are all encased within there. And this seam I'm going to sew slightly wider than 1/4 inch. And you can see that's a nice neat seam. I will box the corners, but first let's turn the top down. All the way around the top, mark a 1/2 inch down. Fold it under on the line and then just pin it in place. Sew all the way around. This is the 2.5 inch line. So again, you're going to fold it exactly on that line and pin. And sew all the way around. You can see why we left that strap loose at the top, so that we would have space to turn that down and do it. And we will have to come back later and sew that loose piece. The next thing to do is box the bottom corners. So I'm turning the bag inside out. For an even corner, I need to find that centre bottom mark again. So again, I'm marking it with a pin. And now I need to open this corner and make it into a triangle shape. And so the side seam lines up with that pin that I've put in the bottom. Make sure it all lines up nicely, and then press that flat. And what I'm going to do is use the edge of the strap as my guide for where I'm going to sew. So I'm just going to pin that across there in place, and make sure it's all nice and smooth. And I'm just sewing along the line. I can feel the edge of the strap beneath, and I know it's just by the stitching that's there. And then I'm actually going to reverse all the way back as well, just to give this corner some extra strength. I'm folding this extra triangle flap in. I'm just going to pin it in line with the centre bottom. And I've just made the other side exactly the same. And I'm just stitching down here to hold it in place. That makes the nice boxed corner there, just the same as the grocery bag. I just need to turn that so you can see it better. Oh, there we go. I decided this would look better with one more sewing line around the top edge, so some top stitching there just to finish it off. And now I'm just going to sew these last little parts of the straps down. I'll just put a pin in there on each one. And then I'm just sewing this last couple of inches that's left over. It's just a case of sewing and turning, almost making a little box shape here. This is the last step, and then this little bag will be done. So I really tried to keep this project simple. You know, there's no lining, just that patch inside covering the back of the stitching if you want it. Sometimes just quick and functional is best. It's all finished off now. So I hope you've liked this project. If you want to see more videos that I make, please subscribe. And also, if you press that bell at the end, you'll always be notified of if I have a new video out. Thanks for watching.